The religion of love is separate from all other religions. عاشقان را ملت و مذهب خداست. For the lovers, the religion and the madhab is Allah.
Law cannot be explained. It must be experienced.
I went to the idol temple, he was not there. I went to the Kaaba, he was not there. I went to Qab Qawsayn, he was not there. I went to the mountain of Hira, he was not there. And then he says, نظر کردم اندر دل خویشتن. I looked into my own heart. در آنجاش دیدم. And I saw him there. And when I saw him there, then I saw him everywhere. You read the Quran, you think, oh, this is too difficult, this is metaphorical, this is incoherent. No, it's because you're incoherent. You need to work on yourself. There has to be that jinsiyat. You need to become the Quran. You need to realize that in yourself, and then you can see the clarity of the Quran.
This is practical technology, if you like. This is how to go about that. If you're closed, seek openness, seek the companionship of those who are open.
True success comes from surrendering to the journey.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Tonight we're going to read Ghazal 499 from Frozen Fars edition. So this is عشق جز دولت و عنایت نیست. Love is nothing but grace and felicity. Meghna Jan, I'm not sure if you're not too tired, if you have the energy.
Yes, I do.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
عشق جز دولت و عنایت نیست. جز گشاد دل و هدایت نیست. عشق را بوحنیفه درس نکرد. شافعی را در او روایت نیست. لایجوز و یجوز تا اجل است. علم عشاق را نهایت نیست. عاشقان غرقه اند در شکراب. از شکر مصر را شکایت نیست. جان مخمور چون نگوید شکر. باده ای را که حد و بایت نیست. هر که را پرغم و ترش دیدی نیست عاشق وزان ولایت نیست. گرنه هر غنچه پرده باغی است. غیرت و رشک را سرایت نیست. مبتدی باشدن در این ره عشق آنکه او واقف از بدایت نیست. نیست شو نیست از خودی زیرا بتر از هستیت جنایت نیست. هیچ راعی مشو رعیت شو. راعی جز صد رعایت نیست. بس بودی بنده را کفا بالله. لیکش این دانش و کفایت نیست. گوید این مشکل و کنایات است. این صریح است این کنایت نیست. پای کوری به کوزه ای برازد. گفت فراش را وقایت نیست. کوزه و کاسه چیست بر سر ره. راه را زین خزف نقایت نیست. کوزه را ز راه برگیری یا که فراش در سعایت نیست. گفت ای کور کوزه بر ره نیست. لیک بر ره تو را درایت نیست. ره رها کرده ای سوی کوزه می روی. آن به جز غوایت نیست. خواجه جز مستی تو در ره دین. آیتی ز ابتدا و غایت نیست. آیتی تو و طالب آیت. به ز آیت طلب خود آیت نیست. بیرهی ورنه در ره کوشش. هیچ کوشنده بی جرایت نیست. چون که مثقال ذره یره هست. ذره ای زله بی نکایت نیست. ذره ای خیر بی گشادی نیست. چشم بگشا اگر عمایت نیست. هر نباتی نشانی آب است. چیست کان را از او جبایت نیست. فرض کنین آب را نشانی هاست، تشنه را حاجت رسایت نیست.
So let's inshallah read the English translation. Kenza Jan, if you're not too tired.
Of course, with pleasure. Bismillah. Love is nothing but felicity and grace. It is nothing but the opening of hearts and guidance. Bouhnaife gave no lesson on love, nor did Shafii leave any narration concerning it. Permitted and forbidden last until death, but the knowledge of lovers has no end. Lovers are drowned in waters of sweetness. From sweetness, Egypt has no complaint. How can a drunken soul not give thanks for a wine with neither limit nor end? Whoever you see full of bitterness and frowns is no lover, nor is he from that realm. Were it not that every bud veils a garden, jealousy and envy would find no way to spread. He who does not recognize his own beginning is but a beginner upon the path of love. Become nothing, forsake your selfhood, for there is no crime worse than existence. Be no shepherd, become the flock, for shepherding blocks the way of guidance. God alone suffices for the servant, yet the servant lacks this knowledge and understanding. He says, these words are difficult and metaphorical. No, they are plain truth, not metaphors. A blind man stumbled upon a jar and said, the cleaner is careless. What are these jars and bowls along the path? Why are these pots not cleared from the way? Remove these jars from the path. Why is the cleaner neglectful in his duty? The cleaner said, O blind man, the jar is not in your way. It is you who lack knowledge of the path. You have left the path, wandering towards the jar. This is nothing but straying into error. Master, better from your intoxication in faith, there is no sign of the first or the last. You are yourself a sign, yet you seek signs. There is no sign better than a seeker of signs. You are astray, for on this path no striver strives without reward. For he sees even the weight of a single speck of dust, not a single fault escapes his sight. No speck of good goes without reward. Open your eyes if you are not blind. Every plant is a sign of water. What draws not from its source? Enough. For water has countless signs, but the thirsty need no advice to seek it.
Any reflections on the Ghazal as a whole before we start the verse by verse? Mekhtar Jan.
It's an extremely difficult ghazal in terms of vocabulary.
And it
Lots
is
of
a lot
things.
of Arabic words, which
Yeah.
are totally. Yes, Masood.
Yeah, it is hard, but as I understand, true love is not materialistic. It is about spiritual guidance and about inner joy.
Yeah.
And love cannot be explained. It must be experienced directly. How is it possible? I don't know. But he says such thing. And the other thing, love is boundless. And true lovers focus on gratitude rather than complaints and finding ecstasy in their love. And the other topic is about truth, and truth and love cannot be hidden forever. They will eventually reveal themselves. I think number now is 7, 8. To experience love, one must transcend the ego and dissolve into the divine. That's the experience of love. And instead of following blindly, lead with love and sincerity. And the essence of love and truth cannot be fully captured in books or words. And he gives an example. Ignorance often leads to dismissing things without understanding their worth. He says this jar has no purpose or value. And the last part of the text about seeking or seeker, the seeker and the act of seeking, I find totally interesting. But what he say, the seeker and the act of the seeking are manifestations of the divine truth. True success comes from surrendering to the journey and not resisting it. The other interesting thing, each word or each moment contains a universe of meaning, and lasting every light or truth is a reflection of the divine source.
Yes. Every plant is a sign of water. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was a beautiful summary of the whole Ghazal. So I'm not sure if there's any point continuing with going to verse by verse, but thank you so much, Mr. John. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
So, I'm just going to go quickly through the verses. I'm conscious of the time. I know it's late. عشق جز دولت و عنایت نیست. Yes, love is a gift. Ultimately, it's a divine gift. It's عنایت. God has to give it to you. It's not something that you can study and learn. And it's happiness. Dawlat is felicity. Dawlat is used with a lot of meanings, power, strength, and also felicity, happiness. It brings happiness with it. And it expands your breast. Gshad dil. As in that's an Quranic expression, right? Ashrah li sadri. Expand my breast. Love expands your heart. Opens your heart. And it guides you. جز گشاد دل و هدایت نیست. So these are the signs of love. It expands your breast and it guides you. عشق را بوحنیفه درس نکرد. And Moulana is saying love is something other than what you study. Yes, fiqh you study with a teacher. That's how you study. You know, you have the different madhahib, the madhab Hanafi and Shafa'i and so on. But madhab ishq, Moulana calls it the religion of love, is separate from all of these. As he says in the Masnavi, millat ishq az hame dinha juda ast. The religion of love is separate from all other religions. عاشقان را ملت و مذهب خداست. For the lovers, the religion and the madhab is Allah. So that's a madhab that transcends all these different madhahib that developed. So عشق را بوحنیفه درس نکرد. When you encounter quotes by Abu Hanifa or Shafii, it's usually about law. It's usually about technicalities on how you pray. But love is something else. Love is in the heart. And Allah Ta'ala looks at the heart. Doesn't look at those technicalities, as in the hadith. And Allah yanzuru ila qulubikum. God looks at your heart. That's the love. La yajuz yajuz ta ajal ast. And those permitted and not permitted, so Moulana calls it the science of yajuz and la yajuz. It has its limitations. It's up until death. But that's not the true knowledge. The true knowledge is what lasts and doesn't end. Al-Ma'ushaq, the knowledge of lovers has no end. Because it's about the heart. It's not about the body, it's about the heart. And the heart lives on and goes on. عاشقان غرقه در شکراب. And lovers are drowned in this sweetness. So that this is gratitude. Lovers are grateful. And because of that, there is no complaint. People who are always complaining, they're not lovers. As Moulana says in the Ghazals, زین خلق پر شکایت گریان شدم ملول. I'm wary of these people who are always crying and complaining about things. Egypt is drowned in sweetness. So Egypt in Persian poetry is the source of all sweetness. Egypt has no reason to complain because it's always drowned in gratitude. So Moulana is playing on shukr and shakar again. There is that sweetness of gratitude. And how can they not be grateful? Because they have the wine that doesn't end. Love has no limit. Love is boundless. And then he says, these people that you see, they're bitter and they're frowning all the time. They're not true lovers. Lovers are those who have expanded hearts. And they're always grateful. And they always have, despite all the hardships that they go through, despite all the pain, but deep down they have that rest. Deep down they have that great gratitude that grounds them. So those people who are bitter and frowning, they're not lovers. And these, they're like buds, like these awliya, again, they hide the garden so that people are not jealous. But within them, within their small frame, there is a garden. There is that spiritual reality that people don't notice. And that's because of the jealousy and envy that people can have. And Maulana says, if you want to begin on the path of love, you need to recognize your own beginning. You need to go back to your source. Go back to your beginning. That's the beginning of the path of love. And those who don't recognize this, they're beginners. Beginners on the path of love. Cancer.
For the translation, I was thinking that forbidden and allowed. I don't remember what you put. Just because of the way it's written in Farsi.
Oh,
it's
yes,
like
it's the other way
more
around.
like licit and illicit.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, no, what I mean is that it would, because he uses the same word and he plays on it. It would be nice to use like licit and illicit.
Licit and
then,
illicit.
Yeah. And I have a question about the bud and the veil of the garden. I think I read somewhere else in Maulana's poetry that the bud itself is the veil of a garden. That within the bud is the entire garden.
Yeah.
Is that like the same meaning as every bud
Same
veils
meaning,
a garden?
yes. I think that's what he means. Yes, within that bud, there's a garden hidden that
Right.
people fail to stay. Yeah.
Okay, because I thought about it not as a verb, but rather as a, like the bud itself is the veil.
Yes, is the veil.
All right.
Yes, is the veil that veils the garden. Yes, yes. Both.
Right. I mean, that would be repetitive, but okay. Yes. All right. So basically, is that related to what he says later on about being the beginner on the path? Because I'm thinking like the bud is basically the start. The
start, yes, yes. But you have a garden within you that you need to realize.
That we need to realize. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, Maulana says, forsake your selfhood. نیست شو نیست از خودی. The worst crime, the worst sin is existence. بدتر از هستیت جنایت نیست. That's worse than anything else. And that's why, they say an act of obedience that brings ujb, brings, you being proud of yourself. That's worse than a sin that breaks you. If you commit a sin and then you're regretful, that's better, the Sufis say, than if you do something, you pray and then you're happy with yourself. Oh, I did this. They say to Rabi'a, a man goes to Rabi'a and says, I've never committed sins. And then Rabi'a says, wujuduka dhanbun. Your existence is a sin. La yuqasu bihi dhanbun. And no other sin can be compared to this sin. That you're existing, that you're relying on yourself. So there's no crime worse than existence. And then he says, Hich ra'i mashu. Don't become a shepherd. Be the flock. You always look for people who guide you, to be guided. When you become a shepherd, that blocks the way of your own guidance. You need to leave the flock behind, as in the case of Moses. Musa left his flock behind and then he found the fire. And there are several examples like this. Al-Ghazali, he left his position and he went in search of the truth. Maulana himself left teaching when he found Shams. So always look for shepherds, look for guidance instead of thinking that you are the guide. This comes again and again in Maulana's Ghazals and Masnavi, the Prophet's advice to Imam Ali. And even if you're Imam Ali, don't think you're beyond guidance. گفت پیغمبر علی را که علی شیر حقی پهلوانی پردلی. The Prophet said to Imam Ali, you're a lion of God, you're a پهلوان. یک بر شیری مکن هم اعتمید. But don't trust on your own being a lion. And درآ در سایه نخل امید. Come under my shade. Come under the shade of the palm tree of hope. So always look for guidance. And there's the story of Moses and Khizr in the Quran, right? So Moses thinks there's no one who knows more than me. And then, the fish and, in Surah Al-Kahf, the story of finding a guide. بس بودی بنده را کفا بالله لیکشین دانش و کفایت نیست. Ultimately, God is enough for the servant. Allah is enough. But he needs to have that understanding that Allah is all you need. You think you need all these things. You think you need, as in the Fihi Ma Fihi we were reading, right? I need halwa, I need ravioli, I need this, I need that. But ultimately, you're hungry. You're hungry for Allah. So kafa billah. God is enough for you. All you need is God. فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ, as in the Quran. God is enough for the servant. But people don't believe. People say, no, that's metaphorical. How can God be enough? I still need this, I still need that. And says, no, Maulana says, that's plain truth. There's no metaphor here. It's plain truth. The problem is you. The problem is you. The problem is not the text. The problem is not on what I'm saying. And then he gives the example of the blind person who stumbles upon a jar, and then he blames the cleaner. What is this jar doing here? And then the cleaner answers. He says, look, the problem is you. The jar is in its own place. It's in the pavement. You don't know where the path is. You don't know where the way is. So you read the Quran, you think, oh, this is too difficult. This is metaphorical. This is incoherent. No, it's because you're incoherent. You need to work on yourself. There has to be that jinsiyat. You need to become the Quran. You need to realize that in yourself, and then you can see the clarity of the Quran. So it's because you lack the sense, you're blind. That's why you keep stumbling into jars. It's not my fault, the cleaner says. رها کرده ای سوی کوزه می روی آن به جز غوایت نیست. Your problem is you've left the path and you're going towards error. The last part of the Ghazal, it's all about signs. He says that what's the best sign for Allah? The best sign of Allah is people who are intoxicated with Allah, the lovers of Allah. That's the greatest sign of Allah. As namaktan hast burhan namak. The salt shaker is the proof of the salt. If there's no salt, you don't need salt shaker. If there's no food, there's no need for a plate. If there's no heaven, you don't need an astrolabe. So the fact that you have lovers of Allah in different parts of the world, people like Maulana, what that shows is there is that yearning, there is that longing, and that's there, that's real. So there's no better sign for Allah than these people, than these lovers. These people are intoxicated. آیتی تو و طالب آیت. You yourself are a sign, and yet you're looking for signs. What better sign than you? There is no better sign than a person who is looking for signs, as in the Quran. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And in yourself, don't you realize? Don't you open your eyes and see? And when you realize that in yourself, then you see Allah everywhere. And that's the Ghazal that Maulana has. I went to so many places looking for Allah. چلیپای نصرانیان سر به سر بپیمودم من در چلیپا نبود. I examined the cross of the Christians. He was not on the cross. I went to the idol temple. He was not there. I went to the Kaaba. He was not there. I went to غرقه قوسین. He was not there. I went to the mountain of Hira. He was not there. And then he says, نظر کردم من در دل خویشتن. I looked into my own heart. در آنجاش دیدم. And I saw him there. And when I saw him there, then I saw him everywhere. بیرهی ورنه در ره کوشش هیچ کوشنده بی جرایت نیست. The reason you don't see the blessings in yourself, that opening of heart, all the things that Maulana talked about, the guidance, the reason you don't see that, if you don't see that, it means you're not on the right path. So that's a test. No striver is without reward. Like if you don't see that reward here and now, you don't see that opening of heart, you don't see that kindness, that guidance, that gratitude, if you don't see that in yourself, you're not on the right path. Because you'll see everything. Every evil that you do, you'll see that. Every harm that you do to others, you'll see that. Also in this world as well. You'll see that in the form of feeling restricted. All those graces being taken away. That's those opening of heart, that's being taken away. So if you see that in yourself, know that there's something wrong. And when you do good, again, you have gشاد. You have the opening of hearts. So open your eyes, examine yourself, because you see these things in your life here and now. هر نباتی نشانی آب است. Every plant is a sign of water. So every plant draws from the water. So all these awliya and anbiya, they all take from Allah. Everything draws from its source. There's so many signs, countless signs. Well, you need thirst. Only thirst is what leads you to the fountain. Is dard or pain or a thirst. And Maulana says, ultimately, if you want to see Allah, you need thirst to guide you. And the thirsty ones are the ones that realize. Maulana gives the example in the Masnavi. He gives the example of Jacob and Joseph. He says Jacob, he caught the fragrance of Joseph all the way from Canaan. Joseph was in Egypt, Jacob was in Canaan, and Jacob caught the fragrance of Joseph because he was thirsty for Joseph. He had that love. And then the person who was carrying the shirt of Joseph all the way, he didn't catch any fragrance. It was right in his hand, he didn't catch any fragrance because he was not thirsty. So acquire that thirst. Once you have that thirst, then you realize. And the thirsty ones don't need advice. You know, if someone's like Majnun Layla, you don't need to tell Majnun, oh Majnun, you should see Layla more often. No, Majnun goes, uses every opportunity to see Layla. If someone's thirsty in a desert and you know you tell them, oh, there's a glass of water there, here's a glass of water, they will not say, you know, I'm not quite sure. They won't ask questions. They're thirsty. They're looking for that desperately. So if you want to be a true seeker, you need to acquire that thirst. So yeah, that's the last couplet. Any reflections on any of the verses in comments? Yes, Masood.
I think it's well known that ghazals and poems are filled with symbols, and here the 4 symbols I see here seem to be the most commonly used. I mean, it's like a summary. Number 1, blindness, it is ignorance. And number 2, he says, zarra, particle, it is a microcosm of the infinite truth. And number 3 is the path and obstacles. It is general spiritual journey. Line 14, 15, and 17. And last one is in, as you said, water and light. It is divine truth and law. The 4 famous symbols.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of symbolism here, totally. Right out there.
Just reading the Ghazal and listening, it's almost as if Allah's made the heavens and the earth in order to have a placeholder, as it were, for these metaphors.
And it goes with what Maulana was saying in فيه ما فيه. So the Quran, it says, وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ. There are verses, there are signs of Allah on earth, around you, in the world around you. وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ, and inside you. But you don't see the signs of Allah outside unless you see them within you first. And then that jinsiyat. Once that jinsiyat is established, then you see the signs of Allah everywhere. Otherwise, you know, you look at the mountains, you just see a mountain. You look at the trees, you see a tree. But once you have the signs of Allah within you, you see them, then you look at the mountain, you see a sign of Allah. You look at the tree, you see a sign of Allah. Even the most mundane things, you see a sign of Allah. Yes, Masood.
I mean, lastly, I would like to say something that I find truly delightful from my side. It is about zarra, about particle. Firstly, I didn't understand what he means. I mean, every particle speaks a word, etc. And I asked me, how is this possible? I mean, the particle speaks a word. I mean, zarra represents, I think, it represents the idea that divine truth is hidden in everything, even the smallest particle. And it also highlights that even a tiny act of goodness carries immense significance, aligning with the mystical concept of the microcosm and the microcosm of the infinite truth.
Indeed. In Persian poetry, there's always zarre and khurshid, the particle and sun, and the relationship between the two. So دل هر ذره را که بشکافی آفتابش در میان بینی. When you dissect the particles, you'll see a sun within each particle. So the sun looks small, but within that there is the sun. Absolutely. Any other reflections, thoughts? Oh yeah, brother.
So a lot of in the Fihi Ma Fihi passage and the Ghazal, we're being shown that we can look at things in two ways. We can look with an eye of gratitude, and we can be open to that wonder, or we can, as it were, close our inner eye, and we can just see things as just meaningless, if you like, not
Yeah.
not realize that they're not signs. And I think part of that is also to do with how we understand the world around us, how we experience it. And it puts me in mind this Ghazal of the passage from the Masnavi in which Adam and Iblis speak, and when Mevlana tells us that Adam wasn't blind to the divine action like we are. So he knew very well who was the author of things, but his attitude was one of adab, to say, I wronged myself.
Yeah.
Whereas it's Shaitan who says, you've done it to me, and so on and so forth. It's about adab, it's about gratitude, it's about these sorts of things, and it's understanding it like this and going into this. It's beautiful imagery. It's always beautiful imagery with Mevlana. There's always teaching, because it's like this is practical technology, if you like. This is how to go about that. If you're closed, seek openness, seek the companionship of those who are open. And so it's surprisingly practical.
Absolutely.